As of today, there are more than 300 million international migrants worldwide, almost twice as many than 30 years ago. The European Union remains the main destination, with over 65 million migrants, followed by North America and Western Asia, which has recently emerged as a new crossroads of global mobility. Economic inequalities continue to fuel migration. The global north is home to nearly 17% of the world's population, but hosts almost half of the global wealth. Meanwhile, in the global south, where more than 80% of the world population lives, the average income is 4 times lower. Wars, crises, and famines contribute to the problem. Today, nearly 700 million people suffer from hunger, and more than 2 billion live in conditions of food insecurity. Furthermore, we have not witnessed so many conflicts worldwide since the 1950s, with over 60 occurring between states and more than 70 internal conflicts. As a result, in 2024, around 123 million people lived far away from home to escape persecution, violence, or natural disasters, which is unprecedented. Of these, 73 million are internally displaced, 39 million are refugees or asylum seekers, another 10 million are displaced due to climate-related issues, though they are counted separately. In the context of this global crisis, Europe finds itself trapped in a paradox. Its population is aging and in need of an alternative workforce, yet it promotes border policies that rely on pushbacks, externalization, and detention. In 2024, there have been approximately 240,000 irregular crossings at EU borders and over 120,000 illegal pushbacks. Meanwhile, more than 2,500 people have died in the Mediterranean Sea in the attempt to reach the European shores. 66,000 people managed to arrive in Italy by sea, marking a decrease of 58% compared to last year. Of these, more than 12,000 were rescued at sea by NGOs, despite the restrictions imposed on them. In the same year, asylum applications lodged in the EU, including appeals, reached almost 1 million, with Germany, Spain, Italy, and France altogether accounting for 3/4 of the total. On the other hand, 438,000 people were granted protection in the EU, although the recognition rates vary significantly across countries. In Italy, asylum applications reached nearly 159,000. However, by the end of the year, more than 200,000 were still pending due to slow and overloaded administrative processes. Of the almost 79,000 first-instance claims examined, only 1 in 3 had a positive outcome, well below the EU average. In contrast, the use of accelerated procedures has increased for applicants from countries deemed safe, with almost 25,000 cases, representing 1/4 of the total applicants in the EU. At the start of 2024, 43 million foreign nationals were living in the EU, 14 million of whom were EU nationals residing outside their country of citizenship. If we also include people born abroad and naturalized citizens, the number of residents with a migration background exceeds 60 million. In Italy, thanks to an annual increase of 169,000 people, the overall foreign resident population amounted to 5.4 million by early 2025, representing 9% of the total population. This confirms Italy's position as the EU's 4th largest country by number of foreign residents, after Germany, Spain, and France. In particular, in 2024, almost 50,000 children were born to foreign families, accounting for approximately 13% of all births in the country. Although this figure is slightly declining, it still helps to offset the low fertility rate among Italians. Most foreign residents are European, with the majority coming from EU member states. Residents from Asia and Africa follow, each accounting for about 1/5 of the total, while just over 7% come from the Americas. Romanians remain the largest national group, with more than 1 million residents, followed by Albanians, Moroccans, Chinese, and Ukrainians. Despite the cumbersome procedures for entry and legal stay, the number of legally resident non-EU nationals rose to 3.8 million by the end of 2024. Just over half of them holds a long-term residence permit, while among the remaining 1.8 million with a fixed-term permit, more than 1 in 3 are in Italy for family reasons, a share that exceeds those staying for work and protection. Of these, 139,000 are in the reception system, but only 1 in 4 lives in the dedicated centers for refugees within the so-called SAI network. The majority are housed in so-called extraordinary facilities, CAS, where services are minimal and integration often remains an illusion. Similarly, among the 16,000 unaccompanied minors hosted in Italy around mid-2025, only 1 in 5 is placed with a family, while almost 2/3 live in second-tier reception facilities. The remaining minors are spread across emergency centers and CAS facilities for adults, often in overcrowded conditions. It is striking that of the 290,000 new residence permits issued in 2024, only 1 in 7 was for work, compared with over 1.3 million job applications from abroad, and around 280,000 entry quotas established by the so-called flow decrees for the 2023 to 2024 period. The already complex pathway for the entry of foreign workforce is often subject to abuses and scams, leaving most migrants in a state of irregularity. Nonetheless, the number of foreign workers increased by almost 6%, surpassing 2.5 million in 2024, over 10% of the total workforce in the country. At the same time, the number of third-country nationals seeking employment fell to 280,000, although they still account for 17% of all unemployed individuals in Italy. Moreover, migrant-led businesses continue to grow, exceeding 660,000 by the end of 2024 and accounting for 11% of all businesses in Italy. However, significant inequalities still lie behind these positive signs. Only 1 in 10 foreign workers holds technical or managerial positions, compared with almost 40% of Italians. More than 6 in 10 are in fact employed in blue-collar roles or low-skilled jobs. Furthermore, 29% have a fixed-term contract or an involuntary part-time arrangement, a share twice as large than among Italians. Therefore, it does not come as a surprise that their wages remain lower, with an average annual income of 17,000 euros compared to the 24,400 euros for Italians. This 30.4% gap confirms persistent biases in the labor market dynamics, still oriented towards more precarious and low-salary jobs. As a result, nearly 2 in 5 foreign nationals, twice as many as Italians, are at risk of poverty or social exclusion. However, of these, only 1 in 14 benefits from the Italian inclusion subsidies due to restrictive eligibility criteria. Still, immigrants continue to make a vital contribution to the country. Indeed, tax revenues exceeded social welfare costs, resulting in a net contribution of 4.6 billion euros. This adds to the ability of the state to fund public services, pensions, and the broader welfare system. The greater exposure of immigrants to poverty is also reflected in their housing situation. Nearly 2 in 3 pay rent, often without formal contracts and at inflated rates. Only 1 in 5 own their homes, while the rest either live at their workplace or share rooms with friends and fellow nationals. The strict procedures still in place for obtaining Italian citizenship also hinder foreigners from fully participating in the national social fabric. In 2024, more than 217,000 people acquired Italian citizenship, marking a new record since 1992. However, most obtained it only after completing the 10-year residency period required by law. This lengthy wait primarily affects the children of immigrants who think, study, and dream in Italian. Similar limitations characterize the education system, where the number of foreign students rose to 931,000, around 12% of all students in Italy. Although 2 in 3 were born in Italy, their share declines as their level of education rises. It ranges from nearly 14% in primary school to less than 9% in secondary school, where 2 in 3 opt for technical or vocational institutes. This is a sign of stalled social mobility which risks, here as in many other fields, wasting invaluable human potential.